What's up, builders? So welcome again to the fourth video in our mini course of building a water tracker app from scratch. So what did we do in the last videos? Let's get a little reminder. We created all the screens and the components needed for the app. In the second video, we learned how to use global state to add values from the main screen and also update the UI. And in the third video, we learned how to have a list to see the history of the water intakes with the amount and the time, and also to use callbacks to be able to delete some of the intakes. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to make this bottom navigation bar works. So this is supposed to be the home screen, but then we have another two screens, the history and the settings. And this is the history, where we were going to see the history in the last 7 days of how much in total the user drank in each of those days and how far were they to hit their goal, and also if they even hit their goal or not. This indicator will show that. And in the settings screen, we're going to see this component where you can set a reminder to get notification for like every 2 hours or 4 hours to get reminded to drink water. Remember, guys, you need to drink a lot of water to stay healthy and stay young. So if you build this, you better use it. All right. So what's the deal now? So for the bottom navigation bar to work, we need to set a widget called IndexedStack. But in general, what you need to do when you use a bottom navigation bar is like every part or everything you want to show in the bottom navigation bar should be a component, not a screen. Because this bottom navigation bar, as you saw in the design video, in the first video, you drop it on a single screen and it will stay in that screen. And then when you click on home or setting or like the other buttons, the component visible will change to another component while still being in the screen. It will not take you to another screen. It will keep you in the same screen. In the design, what I see here is like, this is a component, this is a component, but the home screen, unfortunately, is not a component. So let's make it a component. So to make it a component, go to the outline, and here I have the home page, and here I have all the group or the parts that construct the home page. So all of those, I'm going to convert them to a component. So I will select all the groups that I see here under the home page, and then click on Command G. So now what we can see is we grouped all those parts in a single group. So now we have all the parts of the home screen inside a group, and this group is inside the home page. And now this group, the top level one, is the one that I will convert it to a component. So to do that, just come to the right side in the details panel, click on this button and name your component. And I will call it home component. Submit. Okay, so remember, guys, you can turn any widget into a component. And this widget can be a single widget, like a container, for example, or it can be a widget that contains multiple widgets, like a group or list. So now we turn the group that is responsible to show the home screen into a single component called home component. And then I will just remove it from the main screen. So now we have this here as a component. And also, one important information to know is that when this component is inside the screen, you will not be able to see its details. So this is to prevent you to change some data in the component by mistake. To modify a component, you have to bring it on the board, like you will see the information of that component. So here we see that the home component is a group that is vertical, and it has this alignment. But when we have it inside, we cannot see those details, and this is for you to not make mistakes, because if you are using this component in multiple places, you have to be aware when you modify it inside the main screen, it will be modified as well in the other screens. So let's bring it outside again. Now we need to use a widget called IndexedStack. The purpose of this widget is to switch the visible components. So we will see what I mean by that. So first of all, I will make it take the entire width and the entire height, so it's responsive, and you will be able to choose expand if the home screen setup is set to a column or to a row. But if it was on stack, you will not be able to see the expand option here in the layout. So now Here, I can add the children inside the index tag that I want to switch between them. And those are going to be the home component, the setting, and the history. So let's add them. So I added this placeholder, and the first one will be the history. So I will choose the history. Then I'm going to add another one, and then another one. So this here, I will choose the home component we just created. And lastly, I will choose the settings. So now we have the 3 children inside, but here we can see one. To switch between them, we need to play with this index. So the index 0 will show the first one, which is the history component. If we change it to 1, we will see the home page, and the home component. And if we change it to 2, we will see the settings. Now, as we can see here that the settings require padding, so I will just come to the settings component and add padding. All right, great. And notice that when you changed the component here, you saw the change also in the home page because this is using the same component. So now we can see that, okay, the index stacked is just a widget that holds multiple children and it can switch between them according to the index you pass to it. Now let's talk about the navigation bar itself. Here also there is something called current index, which also presents the selected button. So 0 will light up the first one. If I change it to 1, will light up the second one, and then 2 will light up the third one. So as you can see, or you can even predict, that those two are the same. Here I'm changing the index of the selected button. Here I'm changing the index of the visible component. So both should be connected, which means that you got it right. We need to create a variable in the page. So let's go to the home page. Let's select the home page, and then we want to create a variable called pageIndex. And the type of this variable will be integer, and this will hold index of the visible component, and it will be connected to the index stacked and the navigation bar. Now, why a variable, not a parameter? Because a parameter is something you pass to the screen from outside. A variable is something that is created and used inside the screen. Also, a parameter is something that is not intended to change. So you're receiving data from outside, but you will use the same data. But a variable is something that intended to change. So now, since this page index will change when you click on the buttons, it will be a variable. Because when you have a variable, then you will be able to call refresh to change the UI. But if you don't have any variable here, you will not be able to find the refresh node in the circuit. Because then, if there's no variable, then this means that the screen is not supposed that its UI will change. So you will not have to use the refresh node. But since you have one variable or more, then you will see that node in the circuit. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, we will come back to this part very soon. So now we created the page index. So now I will connect it to the index of the index stack inside the home page. And now also you can see the children on the right side of in the details panel of the index stack, and you can also see them in the outline. So this index stack will show either one of those 3 components. So now let's go back to the index and connect it to the page index variable that we just created. And as you can see, it's inside local because it's a local variable. Now it showed the first one because page index is set to 0. Now let's do the same thing for the navigation bar and change or connect the current index to the page index. So now we can see that it's not working yet. So why is that? So this is because we forgot to do one thing actually, which is going to the onTab functionality. So now the page index doesn't change. It's always set to 0. So you will always see this button light up and the first component visible only. So what I need to do now is I want to edit the onTab functionality. And this onTab functionality gets executed every time the user click on one of the buttons in the navigation bar. So when the user click on the home or the settings, this function will be called. Now this function will gives you something called value, which is the index that the user just clicked on. So now we can see that the index selected is 0, which is the first button. So if the user clicked on home, this function will be called and the value will be 1, which is like the index that the user wants to navigate to. So what you need to do right now is just like you want to change the page index to be equal to the index that the user just selected. To do that, I will add a node and I will go to locals and I will choose the page index. Now I want to set a new value for this variable, and the value will be the one passed from the function, which is the index that the user wants to switch to. Now we change the variable. As you remember, the UI doesn't know by itself that it has to update. You need to tell it specifically, like you need to refresh yourself, and you do that by choosing a node called refresh. So now we did this, so let's click on play. So now when I click on the different buttons, I can see the component visible change, because now when I click on home, then the onTab function get called and the index 1 get passed, and then I get this index 1 and then I change the page index variable I created to B1, and then I refresh the screen. And since the page index variable that I'm changing is connected to the index here of the index stack and is also connected to the navigation bar here, then both will switch. So the index stack will switch to show the component you want to see, and the navigation bar will switch to light up the button that the user just clicked on. Now, I have only one problem, is that I don't want to start from the history component. I want to start from the home component. To do that, you simply need to just change the default value. So the default value of the page index is 0. I will just make it 1. And by doing that, now the default screen or the default component will be always the home one, which is the one in index number 1. So that's it. Now we created the navigation bar and we made it work. So now the next step is to deal with the dialogues and make them appear when the user wants to set a goal and when the user wants to set a custom value for what the user did drink in the day. If the user don't want to add specifically 100 or 200 or 300 or 500, let's say the user want to add 250, when they click on plus, they will be able to input this value. We will see how to do this in the next video. So let's get going, guys.